Show you exactly how to find ADU potential properties and underwrite the deal to make sure it all pencils out. So my name is Dylan, I'm an ADU realtor, and I help investors double their cash flow through ADU plays. So one of my clients right over here, they were looking at single families that generate $3,500 per month, but now they're able to generate $6,000 per month through this property right over here with the ADU, and another client generating close to $10,000 per month with two different ADUs on the same lot. So for step one is essentially building a budget. So a budget essentially means how much cash do you plan on using for the total project. So this can be broken down on the home. So how much are you allocating for the down payment on the home plus the renovations? And then how much are you allocating to build the ADU? So for this example, that will be underwriting, we're going to be having a budget of $850,000 cash to be used. So when you're dealing with this strategy, ultimately you want to make sure that you can essentially be putting as minimum cash down in order to break even on the single family, and then you can allocate your funds towards the ADU. So for our home budget, we will be looking at a $900,000 home. And essentially, so in Southern California, you typically break even from 50 to 60% down, just because we're such a heavy demand driven market that we see more appreciation. And for this instance, we'll be putting 60% down. So for 900,000 times 600, we'll be putting down $540,000 in cash. And then for our ADU budget, let's say for this example, I want to build a 2-bed, 2-bath, and it's going to be 800 square feet. So in Southern California, right around in Orange County where I am, it's typically $300 per square foot to build an ADU. You can get it cheaper, but typically when you go cheaper, the contractor definitely cuts cost and you see that quality decline. So 800 times 300 is going to be $240,000 allocated for the ADU. So now in total, our all-in estimated budget is $780,000, which is perfect. That way we have a buffer zone. And as for timelines, since everyone asks about this, as soon as you close on the home, you're going to want to make sure that you have it all renovated if there's any renovations needed. And then you're going to want to market it for rent. When you're marketing it for rent, you're going to want to make sure there's a couple, I'd say $200 off the market rent. That way you incentivize more people to be looking at the property. And you're going to be letting them know that there's going to be construction of an ADU, and tell them which stuff, like if the garage isn't included in the lease, and have it actually listed in the lease that it's not included. That way you have a tenant who already knows that there's going to be construction of an ADU. So that's how most landlords structure it, where they're able to add an ADU with the tenant being fine in it. That way you can be cash flowing while you're getting all the permits done, and then until it's finally built out. So now we're going to go to step 2, which is find a city and know the rules. So typically when you're searching, you want to make sure you have 2 to 3 different cities that you're open to. So in Southern California, you don't want to have just one city. It's because that there's less homes coming up on the market that you'll just be looking forever and probably not find a property that has an ideal layout for an ADU. So you want to make sure you have 2 to 3 different cities and you know their ADU requirements. The main things you want to look for are the maximum size of the ADU, how many bedrooms you can have the ADU to have, and the setbacks, essentially knowing how far the ADU can be from the property line. Typically it's like 4 to 5 feet. And if there's any additional parking requirements. So for this example, I'm just going to go to a random city. So Costa Mesa ADU. Then we're going to go over here. And it's always important to do your own information and to search it up. So we're going to go to ADU table. So City of Costa Mesa, they're pretty good about ADUs. We're going to be in the detached, looking for a detached one. So you essentially just go down. Number of units can only be one. Okay. Maximum size is 1,200 square feet. So we can build up to a 1,200 square foot ADU, which is essentially 3 beds. And it's a 4-foot setback. Okay. And that's pretty much all. So now we're going to go back. So for the example that we're going to be underwriting, we're going to be looking at Fullerton and at an 800 square foot home. And the max that we're going to build is 2-bed, 2-bath, just because I don't want some overcrowding on the property. So we're going to look at the most ideal lots for an ADU. So the first one is single family in the very front. So let's say this is the driveway. So single family's there. This is the driveway, and there's a lot of empty space. This is ideal for an ADU. And then you have a privacy gate right over here, and then you have allocated parking right here. So another is a corner lot. So let's say these are 2 streets right over here, and the single family is in the very front, and you have that additional space to actually build an ADU. And there's enough parking where you can just have them park right over here. Or even add a 2-car garage. We often see that over here. And then now is the garage conversion. Let me build a garage. So that's going to be the garage. And you'll be actually constructing an ADU, converting it over here. So most people get confused with garage conversions because sometimes people want to add more square footage of the garage by essentially extending it. For certain cities, you can only do up to like 150 square feet. But once you hit over 150 square feet, you're essentially going to be knocking a couple walls down. And now it's actually considered new construction. So you're going to have abide by the new construction laws. So it can be a problem if the garage is too close to the setback. And now it's considered new construction where you're actually going to have to move it over here. So that's one thing you want to consider. So now we're actually going to be underwriting the deal. So I said I want to be looking Fullerton. So I got my property search right over here, looking for a single family. And let me show you exactly how to search. So let's say my budget's like 900,000 max. 900. I typically like having the lot size above 5,000. It doesn't need to be a huge lot. And then review results. I forgot to. Let me put my city. I want to look in Fullerton. So the best way for looking at ADU potential lots is actually through Google Maps. Google Maps. So we're just going to see the overall layout, the overview. So this wouldn't really pencil out because there's no easy access to the backyard for another for an ADU, because then they would essentially have to go over here and somehow you're supposed to find some parking. I think I did the filters. Let me do it to 950. Let's look at this one. Yeah, this wouldn't work. Let's check this one. Okay, so this one's interesting. So the single family is facing towards the front, and then you have the garage right over here. And it's a separate alley access. I do like that layout, kind of. So you want to make sure it's 4 feet set back. You can add an ADU right over here. It's just going to be a lot more crunched. So that one's a fine one. Let's see if there's at least one more. Like this one, 880. Okay, so the single family is facing over here. You got your garage and a lot of unused space right over here. So this is just a retaining wall right over here. You can actually open this up and have a curb. I typically see a 2-car garage right over here, and then you can add your 2-bed, 2-bath. So that's actually a really good potential one. So it's 880. It's an updated interior. Kind of looks flipped. Doesn't matter. Okay. So we're going to underwrite the loan. $889. Let's just say we're putting 55% down. It's going to be a 7% interest rate. Rates are at 6. You got to add that 1 point for the investment properties. And then property tax, yeah, close to 1%, 1.1%. Home insurance, I would say $4,000, because we want to make sure our PITI is pretty on par. Okay. So our total monthly payment is 3s. And then we're gonna fill in the price, 880. Yeah, 880. And let's find out how much it rents out for. Closed. So this one's an updated 3-bed, 1-bath. This is an ADU right there. Yeah, this one's not as updated. A little bit bigger, 4,000. I would say ours rents out for 3,800. And then we got to put much cash down? $880 times 55%, 484. So we know 3 beds rent out for $3,600. I would honestly say $3,200 for quick maths. And then for the ADU, and then you add that up, 3,200 plus 3,800, 7,000 total for the rent, and the mortgage, 3,769. So you're going to be netting 37, so 32, 31. So after the mortgage payoffs, you're going to be netting $3,000, $3,200. But in total, you're going to be getting an asset that gets $7,000 in rent. So that's how you underwrite an ADU deal.